Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So if you remember last year, I did this video on the jack-o'-lanterns. I did the ghosts and the regular jack-o'-lanterns last year. I actually had the ideas to do some of these other ones, but I didn't get a chance to get around to them before the video came out. And that video kind of took off, and it's kind of taken off again now this year, now that that time of year is rolling around again. So I thought it would be no better time than to go ahead and make another video just showing you these new ideas that I came up with and the little extra things that I did for them. I'm not going to rehash the entire build process. I mean, I'll show, pieces of it as I'm talking, but if you want to see that, go back and watch the video from last year where I go over the entire build process, and I will put a link to it at the end of this video. But in the meantime, today we're going to talk about how I did some of the little idiosyncrasies that I added to these new ones, and more importantly, I'm going to talk about some of the questions that you guys had over the last year that I got from the comments on the other video. A lot of them, most of them having to do with blowouts and using the brad nailer and, having trouble getting the nails to stay inside the wood. And I actually had another person comment on that video not too long ago, about a week ago, that was misunderstanding how that all works. So I'm going to explain to you all the tips and tricks that I use in detail, how to get your brad nails in without, having them come out. And if they do come out, what do you do to fix it? What do I do to fix it? I'll show you all that in this one, along with some other tips and stuff that'll help you out that maybe I didn't elaborate enough on the last one. And by the way, stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to shut the lights off again and show you these guys, in all their glory. And I'm also going to share some thoughts that I have on some even newer designs that hopefully maybe I'll do a video on those next year. So stick around, we're going to talk about these today. Okay, so apart from some new additions that I'll go over in detail in a few minutes, these lanterns were made with pretty much the exact same process that I showed in last year's video. I drilled some holes for the scroll saw blade and then cut out the faces on the scroll saw using the same Olsen spiral blade that I used last time, because it allows you to cut in any direction and get nice sharp angles and corners much easier, for me anyway, rather than having to constantly spin the workpiece around and cut only in a forward direction, which requires much more skill to do successfully in my opinion. As always, I'll leave links down below for these blades and everything else that you see me use in this video if you're interested. Once those were done, I assembled the lantern boxes using a little Type-On 2 and some 1-inch 18-gauge brad nails, and here's where some people ran into issues. One of the other things that came up regarding that last video, in the last couple of days actually, was one of you guys left a comment on that video regarding the orientation of my brad nailer in relation to the wood that I was shooting into. And he was actually mistaken, but I left a lengthy response explaining why. But, I think one of the things that I remember reading from the comments on that last video was that a bunch of you were having trouble getting your nails to go in straight and having issues with blowout and stuff like that. So I figured I would give you a little instruction on how to do that. Now, I've considered doing a video on, brad nailer tips and tricks, but there's a couple of big YouTubers that have already done pretty comprehensive videos on that, like The Honest Carpenter and Brad Rodriguez over at Fix This Build That. They both have videos on that, and I'll leave a link to those in the description below this video if you want to go and watch them, because they're very good. But in any case, I'm going to go over the things that are relevant to what we're doing here in using the brad nailer and what orientation that you should put it in and why, and the little tricks and tips that I use to make sure that I don't get any blowout. And if I do, I'm going to try to recreate a blowout so that I can show you what I do to overcome that. All right, so let's check it out. All right, so in a nutshell, your brad nails are going to be thinner on this side and a little bit thicker across this dimension in the front and back of them. Kind of like, just imagine a 2x4, right? So this would be the edge and that would be the flat part of the 2x4. So what that means is this nail is going to want to bend in the easiest way for it to bend, which is along its thinnest axis, right? So that would be this side. So if this nail's going to bend, more than likely it's going to want to bend this way or that way, as opposed to this way or that way, because it's, you know, it's got more metal. It's harder for it to bend in this direction, and it's much easier for it to bend in this direction. Okay, and when you put them inside of the brad nailer, they sit in this orientation. So when they shoot out this way, and they're more likely to either bend in this way or that way, or if you're looking down the head of your brad nailer, your nails are more likely to bend either to the left or to the right, as opposed to forward and back in that orientation, because of the way that the nails are designed. So here's a scrap piece of plywood to maybe better illustrate that. So just imagine this is a brad nail, and this is that thin side, and this is that thicker side, right? So if this piece of wood, if it was metal, it's going to be more likely to bend in this direction or that direction along this thinner edge, as opposed to bending this way on this thicker edge. It's just stronger because of the way that it's designed. So that's the way it's going to bend. That's what I'm talking about. So taking that into consideration, if you were to hold your brad nailer parallel to the board you're shooting into, if that nail is going to bend, it's far more likely, again, to bend to the inside or outside of your gun as opposed to forward and back of the gun, because of the way that nail is designed. So if it does bend, you know, you're far more likely to have it come out this side or that side. However, if you shoot your brads perpendicular to the piece that you're putting it into, what happens now is your brad nails are going to go this way or that way, and it's going to go into the meat of the wood on both sides. Now, that doesn't mean you're never going to get a blowout. There's other things that come into play here, you know, like the grain direction of the wood. This is not a good example, but, you know, the grain direction of the wood's kind of going this way. So if you were to shoot a nail in from this side, it's going to want to kind of go along that grain, and over the length of the nail, it might turn in that direction. But, you know, that's not going to be too much of a problem for these, because we're shooting across the grain here anyway. But, you know, a knot is also going to cause that to give you all kinds of problems as well, because it's harder than the wood around it generally. So I try to avoid shooting into knots at all costs, because otherwise you might get one that doesn't seat all the way, and that can be a problem too. But anyway, so what I do is I always shoot perpendicular for that reason, okay? And I also know, and it's going to depend on your brad nailer, but I also know where my nail's going to come out, and it's going to come out right here in this space between this yellow piece and this metal piece. That space in the middle there is where my brad nail comes out, and I just have gotten good at, you know, being able to determine about where that is in order so that I get in the middle of that board. If you're having trouble, what you may want to do is mark where the center of your board is, and then make a line along the top there so that you can use that as a reference to where to shoot your nails. So it'll help you hopefully to avoid getting blowouts if you're having a lot of problems with them. The other thing that you may or may not be doing, and you might not notice, is, you know, again, your nail is less likely to bend in this direction. However, what comes into play here is how you're holding your nail gun when you're shooting. If you're shooting, I mean, even just a little bit in that direction or that direction, then you're far more likely to have your nail come out in the direction that you're shooting, just because of the angle that you're using. So what I have done is I've gotten good at watching this gap here between the wood and the bottom of the gun and making sure it's more or less even. And whenever if you're having problems, especially if you're having blowout on the front side, because if you get blowout on the inside, it's not a big deal with these lanterns anyway. And I'll kind of show you what I do for that when that happens. But if you're worried about that, one thing that you can do, and that I also tend to do, is if you're going to err at all, err a little bit towards that angle, so that if it does come out, it comes out inside rather than outside. And you know, if you do get a blowout, again, I'll show you how to fix that. But whatever you do, don't angle out towards the outside of the face of your lantern, because if you get a blowout out there, it's still fixable, but it's a bigger problem in that situation. So again, either try to keep it as level as possible and get used to doing that, or maybe just a hair angled in towards the inside like that. And that's what I do. All right, so I've manufactured a couple of blowouts here for you. Yeah, I have this one here, which is kind of just barely coming out through the wood, and this one that's sticking out quite a bit more. And in this case, we're simulating that it's on the inside of the box. Now, if you do it when you get to the end and the box is fully enclosed, this gets a little more difficult, because then you got to find something else that's shorter to get in there and do what we're about to do. But let me show you what I do when I have these situations here. So on a small one, like this one that's barely even sticking out, I will take the smallest punch that I have, like this one, and I will simply use it on, now this is on the inside of the box. You're not going to see this. Nobody's going to see this, so I don't care what it looks like inside there, as long as when somebody sticks their hand in there, they're not going to snag themselves on this nail. So I'll put it on the end of that brad nail and just tap it down into the wood. So it'll make a little divot in the wood, but there's no chance of anybody, you know, injuring themselves or getting their clothes or their sleeve or whatever snagged on there if they stick their hand down in there. Now, you can do the same thing in this situation. You're just going to have a bigger dent. But if you really want to, cedar is very, very soft. So what you can do with one like this that's sticking out like this, or even more than this, you know, if it's very close and I want to get it out of there, sometimes what I'll do is I'll try to get something up underneath it and bend it up a little bit so that it's sticking up a little bit more, so I can get at it a little bit better, like that. You don't always have to do that, but it helps sometimes. And then I get, it's a little bit bigger of a punch than the one I used before, and I put it right on the end of this guy, like this, and then just tap. It's kind of hard to do in this situation because nothing's holding this thing down. Yeah, make this easier on myself. There we go. So I'll just take this thing and tap that nail, and again, the cedar is so soft. You see how it comes right out of there, right? Oh, now I'm gonna have a hard time getting it off there. All right, so on the other side, you see where it's come back out, or that's another one. I just tapped this one back out, and on the other side, you see where it's now sticking out the front here. And then I just grab a pair of diagonal cutters, and you got to be careful here if it's on the outside of the box, because again, cedar's soft and it'll dent really easily. But you can just grab that and pull it the rest of the way out, just like that. And that's it. The only thing you have now is that little hole there. It's an extra hole, but who cares? And then you just reshoot the nail with another nail. So that's another way to fix it. So you can either beat it in, push it out, and again, it's really easy on cedar because it's so soft. Now, what I do in this situation, let me get this out of here before I stab myself with it. So what I do in this situation, this is on the outside of my box. So let's imagine it's on the face of your lantern. In this case, I would more than likely try to get that out of there the way that I just showed you. And, you know, by pushing it out, and then you're going to leave a little hole. And then honestly, really, who cares there? It's not going to matter. This thing's supposed to be rustic. These are fence pickets. They're going to have little imperfections all over them anyway. Once you burn it and stain it, you're not even going to notice it. So I'm going to tap this out just like I did the other one, I guess. Or at least let's put it in a little there. That's perfect. All right, so see, we got this big problem here now where this thing's sticking all out. It's messed up the front of my board, and I got all kinds of issues here now. And I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? All right, so at this point, you either get it out or you push it in. If it was sticking out this much, I would just take it out. So if it's sticking out that much, I'll just take it out. If it's not sticking out that much, you can have the option of leaving it in there and doing the same thing that you did on the inside. And I'm going to try to go ahead and simulate that too, but because the fix is the same for both. All right, so let's say we have this situation where it's sticking out that much. You don't want to take it out. Maybe you tried to pull it out. Let's say you tried to pull it out and you cut. You can't, no matter what you do, you got a problem here. You broke that. You can't get it out now. And you're like cussing at yourself and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And you're thinking you're going to throw this thing away. Again, these things don't have to be perfect. We're going to do the exact same situation here. We're going to take that nail. Well, in this case, we need to put it back in all the way. And then we're going to take that nail. I can still get this out, but I just want to show you the fix for this. We're going to take that nail and we're going to drive it down in there like that. So it's down inside the wood and you can't even see it. I mean, honestly, you could leave it like that. I mean, that's not going to cause you any grief or any problem. Honestly, I probably don't know if I'd even do anything in this case. But for the sake of showing you what I do when it's actually even worse than this, I've had a big old hole blown out here. And all you do is get some sawdust and some CA glue and you fill it up. And let me do that right now for you. All right, so again, you have your little hole here or whatever kind of defect you have. And let's say it's on the face, so you're really concerned about it. All I did was I got a little sawdust from same kind of a board, a cedar board. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and just work it down into my defect here as well as I can. Make sure you get it down in there. Okay. And then you can leave like a little bit piled up on top. But once you get it in there, you're just going to take some thin CA glue. Let's let it work its way down inside there. If you have activator, that's helpful. Hit it with a little activator to get it to set up. And then when it's good and dry, all you have to do is sand it. So once you get it sanded down nice and flat, now it's going to be darker than the rest of the wood because of the CA glue, but you know, it just looks like some sort of a knot or, you know, some kind of a little feature that's part of the wood. It's, again, these things are really rustic, so it really doesn't matter. And then once you get done to this point, you know, and then you get to the point where you're finishing, you're going to burn it just like the rest of the lantern. And then you're going to stain it. And I'm just doing this quick, guys. It's going to look even better when you take your time and, you know. And again, this is not going to hide the defect. It's going to be there. You're just filling it in so that it's less noticeable and you don't have a big hole there. But all it does is it just looks like some, you know, sort of a rustic feature in the wood. My point is that once you get the whole thing stained and finished, nobody's ever going to even notice it. There's not going to be a hole there anymore, and it's not a big deal. I've done it with much bigger ones than that, and it looks just fine. So another thing that can sometimes happen is that the head of your brad nail doesn't go all the way down into the wood and is sticking up like that. And obviously you don't want to leave it sticking out like that, especially on the outside of your project. Now you might think, oh, I'll just grab a punch like I did before to get it out and just tap it in. And yes, that will work. The problem with doing it that way, however, is that I find that no matter how careful you are, eventually you're going to slip off as you're tapping this. And what happens is you start slipping off and you get these holes all around it, you know, that you don't want. I'm intentionally trying to make them far away, but you'll make holes all around this thing, and you don't want that. You want a little hole around the head of the nail, and that's it when it goes in. And again, you can do it this way if you're really careful, and I have done it before. It's just, you know, it's not 100%. So what I have done instead is I got this nail set tool, and I think I got it from Rockler, but on one end it has a center punch, and on the other end it has this like divot in the end of it, which fits perfectly on top of an 18 gauge brad nail. All right, so all you do is it's two metal ends, and then there's a spring in between. So whichever side is down, you put it on the wood, you pull the spring up, and then the two metal pieces smack together in the middle and cause it to drive down on that end. If you're using the center punch, for example, this is real handy. So when you're trying to make a starter hole for a screw or for drilling or something like that, or even a screw, that works really well for that. But what we're talking about here is these brad nails, and what I like to do with this is this is a real good tool for driving those down in there all the way, and it just leaves a little hole around the head of the screw. So again, you want to hold that down on there over the head of the screw, and you need to maintain pressure on it, because if you let it slip, it can slip. Not nearly as easily as the punch will, but hold pressure down on it so that it doesn't slip off, because it will create holes around your nail just like the punch will. And then you grab the other end and pull up on it, and you just tap it until it goes down in there, and usually got to tap it a couple times, and you get it in there as far as you want it to go. And then we'll do this one. Tap it a few times until your nail is sub-flush beneath the top of the wood there. And as you can see, just leaves a little circle around the head of the nail, but the nail is completely flush now with the top of the wood. And that's what I do when that happens. So I was watching that first video again, and I realized that I explained to you how I measured where to put the nails on this bottom using a scrap piece. And in my mind, it sounded like I was explaining it well, but I think I should have probably shown you a little bit better. So I think I'll take the opportunity to do that now. But essentially, this bottom piece should be exactly 1 inch longer than the width and length of the box. So if you center it up properly, when you test it on the bottom, I always set it up like this, and then I measure and I get it all centered. Once I get it all centered, I'll mark it where I want to put the glue at, and then I'll put the glue on, or I'm sorry, where I want the corners to be at, and then I'll put the glue on, and then stick it down, and then, kind of hold it together. Once the glue's there, the hydraulic action of the glue is more or less going to hold it together, but don't let it move, and just gently flip it over. And if it's centered correctly, you should be about 1/2 inch hanging over on all 4 sides, okay? And then each of these pieces should be about 1/2 inch wide after you mill them. At least they were for me. So that goes without saying that for more or less, your nails are going to be about 3/4 of an inch in on all sides. But I wanted to double check that because I don't want to have blowouts, and you might get a little off. Maybe there's some warpage in the wood, which is fine. Everything will still go together, but it might make this base sit a little wonky, which is, again, not a problem. But anyway, what I was talking about is I'll just take a scrap of wood, and you know that you want to put your brad nails right in the center of the wood that you're driving into, right? So all I was saying was I line it up with the edge of the box. So I'm lining it up with this edge of the box, okay? And then with that other piece hanging over, all I'm saying is measure in from the edge of that to the center of this board, which in this case is right at about 3/4 where it should be. And then I was marking that. And then I just checked all 4 dimensions. I checked it from this side. So when you're doing it on this side, you're going to measure it flush with the box this way. When you're doing it on this side, you're going to measure it flush with the box this way and in. It should be right around 3/4. There might be a 1/16 or so difference depending on, different factors. But, in order to get those nails to drive in straight without giving you any blowouts, you need to make sure you're more or less in the center, because you don't have a whole lot of wood to work with. And that's what I was talking about with the whole scrap piece thing. You're just measuring, you're lining it up with the board, and then using that overhang and measuring into the center of that board to give you a rough estimate of where you need to put your nails. And again, if everything is milled properly, it should be around 3/4 of an inch in, but it might be a 1/16, give or take, because of various reasons. But anyway, that's what I was talking about. All right, now back to the new lantern designs. So once I got the boxes assembled and the bottoms on them, I started drawing out the new designs for the front pieces of the tops on the new Frankenstein and vampire lanterns, which are meant to look like the hairlines for those characters when the lids are on. In the case of Frankenstein, it's a jagged line meant to kind of look like his short bangs, and for the vampire, it's meant to look like the classic widow's peak hairstyle, both of which you'll see in a second. I also drew up some wings for the new owl lanterns, as well as some bat-like ears for the vampire, and then cut them out. I did a few on the scroll saw just to show you that the entire project can be done on the same tool, but to be honest, it's quite a bit easier to do it on the bandsaw if you have one. Once they were all cut, I cleaned up the edges on the oscillating belt/spindle sander. Next, I put all the tops together exactly the same way I showed in the previous video, burned all the boxes and lids, and stained everything in the appropriate colors. The owls are all black, the Frankenstein is green with a black top, and the vampire is white with a black base and a black top. Again, all of these steps are shown in detail in the previous video. Once the boxes were stained and all the stems applied to the tops, I used a Q-tip to apply red stain on the teeth and around the mouth of the vampire faces to simulate blood. Once that was done, I burned and stained all the pieces that will be the wings for the owls and the ears for the vampires. Black for the wings and white for the ears. Finally, it's time to add on all the cool little accents that really make these new lantern designs stand out. In the case of Frankenstein, it's the two electrodes that stick out the sides of his neck. For this, I just used more of the same dowels that I used to make the stems on the tops. I would have preferred to screw them on from the inside of the side panels, much like the stems are held onto the tops, but because I had already fully assembled all of the lanterns at this point, I was forced to attach them by just gluing them on and using a few pin nails to hold them into place while the glue dried. The 23 gauge pin nails that I had were 1.5 inches long, so I trimmed the electrodes down to 1 1/8 of an inch so that I could shoot the nails through the lugs and into the side panels without them popping out on the inside of the lantern, and it worked just fine, though they would be much less likely to break off if screwed on, which I will do on any others that I make prior to assembling the boxes next time. I then attached the wings to the sides of the owl lanterns. To do this, I made a paper template of a wing cutout and folded the paper so that it fit over the side of the box so that I could trace out the shape of the wing and use that as a reference to glue the wings on. This worked well, and once I glued them on, I just shot a couple of 5/8 inch 18 gauge brad nails into them to hold them into the sides of the lantern as the glue dried. Finally, I applied the vampire ears much the same way, only with these I just chose some measurements that looked good to me to place and trace them, rather than using a paper template, and then glued and nailed them into place. And that's it. That's how I made these new lantern designs and incorporated some cool new features on them to make them stand out from the lanterns of anyone else who happens to be making and selling them in my area. I think they came out pretty cool. If you agree, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments, both to stroke my ego and the YouTube algorithm so that they push the video out for more people to see. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope that you liked the new designs. I hope that the tips and tricks that I shared with you were helpful and will help you to make these without having some of the problems that other people have had in the past. And I know I told you I was going to talk about some other designs that I had in mind. So some other ones that I'm thinking about doing is a witch. I have to figure out a face for that, or pick one of the ones that I have in like the 100 or so files that I have that I got from Etsy. But some sort of a witch with, you know, instead of a rod on top, or, you know, the little, this thing, maybe like a triangular piece, kind of like a witch's hat. And I don't know, I'm going to work on that one. And mummy, werewolf, cat. Funny story, these owls were actually supposed to be cats, but they ended up looking more like owls. So I have to go back to the drawing board on that. But all that maybe next year, or, you know, if you guys can come up with something that'll work for that, then beat me to it, and maybe we'll see your video on it. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Stay safe and happy woodworking. I will see you on the next one. And lights out.